Now we have to talk Venezuela. We have to talk China. Brandon Weichert is our go-to for all of these questions. He has criticisms of the China deal. But first, before we go China, Brandon, I want to know why there are Russian cargo jets landing in Venezuela.
Well, it's because they know we're getting ready to invade Venezuela, and they're trying to help their client out as much as possible.
Okay, now I'm gonna touch on that for a moment. Help them out as much as possible, because it used to be proxy wars were fought with at least some level of secrecy, even if everyone knew what everyone was doing.
Yeah.
Then, of course, we started shipping weapons to Ukraine, and every American politician bragged about how many Russians we were killing with them. So I'm assuming the veil of secrecy is off on this sort of thing, and Russia's just going to come out and say, we gave them this so they can kill Americans.
Well, the Russians aren't saying that. It's the Venezuelans who are saying it. The Venezuelans have let the cat out of the bag, and they're letting everybody know, and I think we've confirmed that the Russians have given them the KH-31A anti-ship ballistic missile. We're still trying to determine if the Russians handed over the even more advanced KH-31AD anti-ship ballistic missile, but it's somewhat ironic because I think the reason Maduro is sharing this publicly is to try to put the fear of God into the Americans so that they won't attack, but it's actually, I think, encouraging the Pentagon to seek to strike a land invasion, partly because they're going to want to send the Marines to go hunt those launch sites down and make sure they're destroyed, because the KH-31A and the KH-31AD definitely are such very serious threats to our warships that are off the coast of Venezuela right now.
Brandon, can you expand on this missile and its capability? Because most people do not understand. So is this, we can't stop it? Can it sink an aircraft carrier? What can these things do? What's the range? What's their capability?
Well, just not to get too technical, our ships, all of them right now that are operating off the coast of Venezuela, are within range of this thing. And our ships have to be where they are to support any kind of operation that we will be conducting in the Venezuelan area. So our ships really can't move that far if they want to be in a support role. Of course, we have, I believe, a Los Angeles-class submarine off the coast armed with Tomahawk cruise missiles, and that will play a factor as well. That's not threatened by this missile, but our surface ships are, including the USS Gerald R. Ford, which the last I heard about 4 or 5 days ago, it was being retasked from the Mediterranean over to the Caribbean to support what I suspect will be an invasion of Venezuela. The thing about these missiles, the Russians have been, listen, we have a lot of misinformation in the West about the Russian military capabilities. Just to clear up any confusion, the Russians are very serious players militarily. They are not, as McCain described them before he died, just a giant gas station with nukes. They are very real military power. They have very serious systems of increasingly complex capabilities. This missile is one of them, and they have a war machine right now, a war economy that can industrially produce these things like sausages, and they are. These weapons are very dangerous to U.S. Navy warships, and that is why they are flying them in by the plane load and have been for a year or so to Venezuela in anticipation that we were going to do this. These things can swarm. They are very cheap to produce, relatively speaking. They can be fired in multiple iterations, and they can overwhelm the ship-based air defenses that we have, anti-missile defenses that we have on the destroyers, on the carrier. This is their threat. It's not necessarily that only one fired or two fired will be the threat. It's that dozens and dozens of them fired at once at a single target will overwhelm the onboard defense systems.
Okay. Again, we're speaking with Brandon Weichert. So we are going to nerd out on some technical details because details matter, and they can be the difference between 3,000 sailors going to the bottom of the ocean or not.
Right.
Okay, Brandon. So you already brought up taking them out at the launch site. Can you talk to me about the launch site? And I ask it very stupidly for this reason. Can we
Yeah.
not detect the launch site and drop a Tomahawk on it before they send an aircraft carrier to the bottom of the ocean?
Yeah, no, I am sure that we will be doing our own with, like I said, that Los Angeles class submarine that's lurking there. I am sure we will be doing everything we can to knock out known launch sites. The problem is, Trump said he doesn't like to telegraph military movements, but unfortunately, this has been the worst telegraphed one he's done, in the sense that the Venezuelans have known since at least August we're coming. So they have had time to dismantle their launch sites and disperse them throughout the country, harden the sites and whatnot. And the Russians are experts at that. And the Russians have absolutely been helping them do this, as, by the way, have the Iranians.
Okay, so hardening the sites. Don't we have all these different things we can drop that can destroy bunkers deep underground? How do you harden a site where we can't touch it?
The Israelis did not, in their war with Iran, contrary to what the media is saying, none of those underground missile cities were destroyed, because the Iranians had hardened them so well that they still have these massive bunkers of hypersonic weapons and missiles. It's the same thing going on here. Plus, they can hide them out in the jungle. It's harder for us to detect. This is why the discussion is they want to send in Marines to basically verify we're going to be able to kill these things before they can be much of a threat to the fleet. But of course, the fact is, all it takes is one swarm. I mean, all it takes is one go. They don't even have to sink an American ship. All they have to do is damage it sufficiently that there are some pretty amazing photos of it that go out on the internet, and that sends a signal to the rest of the world that Uncle Sam really isn't as powerful as he once was, and then it's open season on the United States.
Brandon, again, speaking with Brandon Weichert here, politically, and I know that's not necessarily what you and I usually talk about, but politically, doesn't this put Donald Trump in an extreme amount of danger politically? Because the American people, especially now, they're kind of okay with a little foreign adventuring if you're dropping some bombs on Iran with no real threat to our troops, no damage to our stuff. Wake up one day, we celebrate on Instagram and call it a day.
Yeah.
If an American sailor dies down off Venezuela, they're going to start asking harder questions.
Yeah. Well, especially if this turns out like Iraq did. Because remember, Wolfowitz and Rumsfeld, they were running around telling everybody that the invasion was going to pay for itself. We were going to go in, topple Saddam, be greeted as liberators, install a democracy in short order. And, oh, by the way, all the oil and natural gas would pay for the invasion. Of course, none of that happened. We ended up getting stuck holding a bag, an insurgency. It was a nightmare. It took us a decade to get out of there, and we got out of there with our tail between our legs. Similarly, my concern, and I'm not saying this will happen, but my concern is twofold. First, Trump is clearly committed to regime change in Venezuela, and I'm no lover of Maduro. Happy to see him go, but it's really a problem for us if we do this, because secondly, Maduro is mobilizing 3 million of his Bolivarian militia guys. Now, there's a lot of debate in the military kind of observing community as to how combat effective these guys are, but even if a quarter of that number is combat effective, we're talking about, another Vietnam potentially here, because we're going to try to get out after we knock out Maduro, and we're going to find that we kicked over a hornet's nest.
Brandon, do you have another segment for me to talk China?
Yeah.
We will be back with more Brandon Weichert. That's exactly why I wanted him to come on. Ow. Hey, Chris, I just bit my tongue. I don't know how I did that when I was talking, but I bit my tongue. Don't worry. Why aren't you worried? Now, let's talk Trump, China, trade deal. We have one more year now with rare earths. So what are the details of all this? What do we like? What do we hate? Brandon Weichert, of course, joins us again for this. Brandon, talk to me. Did we do well? Did we do poorly?
Well, I just want to clarify one thing, because I think I said launch site about the KH-31A in Venezuela. I meant to say the depots, because the launch site are the air bases, because they're launched by the Russian-made warplanes. But it's the depots where they're housed. That's what I was talking about. That's why I mentioned the Iranian missile cities. But with that being out of the way, the question of China-U.S. trade war, Well, this is a sticky wicket. I'm getting a lot of pushback from my friends in the Mar-a-Lago crew because I think we got our butts handed to us in the trade war by China, and I think the Chinese know it, and I think the rest of the world, notably the global South, knows it, which is breathing new life into the BRICS alliance. Contrary to what Trump said, it's not dead. It's the fact of the matter is China had one card to play, and they played it brilliantly, and that was the rare earth mineral ban, or the threat of a rare earth mineral ban, specifically the export controls they wanted to put in on heavy rare earth minerals. That's the stuff that we need to make everything from your laptop to cruise missiles and everything in between. And the Chinese control the bulk of it. And when Trump went after them in the trade war, they said, you can tariff us all you want, but you're not getting access to the rare earth minerals. And now Trump realized that, and that's why he's trying to cut a deal at all costs.
Okay, so Brandon, how in the world do we get to a place where the Chinese control so much that they have this leverage over us? What?
Well, remember, this is what Trump was rightly attacking in all three of his campaigns whenever the issue of trade came up. I mean, he's the only president in my lifetime who talked about this seriously and had an idea of what to do about it. The problem is he ran out of time. He ran out of daylight. Because what happened was, going back to the 1970s, Nixon and Carter both opened up to China, and ever since then, 40 or 50 years now, both Republican and Democratic Party presidents have systematically dismantled our own capability to produce stuff and to mine for things here, and they gave it to the Chinese. And as we shut down here, and Wall Street got rich off the shutting down of everything, the Chinese were able to make themselves into a industrial mega power, a superpower, and now they've reached kind of that critical moment where they have their hand on the beating heart of the rare earth mineral market, which is the one bottleneck that if they were to cut us off from, we would basically go back to the 18th century technologically.
Don't we have our hand on their economic heart too, because they need us buying things? Or have they found so many new customers they don't need us as bad as they used to need us?
And this is the key thing here. It's not that the Chinese beat us so completely, they're laughing that, that we're never going to be a factor. You're right. They did need us to buy stuff, at least for now, but they are finding alternative markets, much the same way the Russians are for their stuff. The key thing here with China is the objective, right? What was our objective? What was their objective? Our objective was a lot harder to achieve. Our objective was, we want to get as much of our stuff out of China and get our companies out of China to either return to the United States, onshoring or reshoring, or to go to a friendly country called friendshoring, where our supply chains couldn't be disrupted and China couldn't do what they did ultimately to us in the trade war. What China's objective was a lot easier. They just needed to hang on long enough to inflict enough pain on our farmers and our high tech and our defense establishment that they would then get us to reopen trade with them. And that is exactly what they've gotten. And so that is why I say they won the trade war, because their objectives were much more attainable. And they calculated correctly that by squeezing us on that one issue, the rare earth mineral issue, they could basically get us to, contort in ways I don't think Trump would have had to do even 4 years ago. My friend Dan Collins, who's done a bunch of business in China, he's a factory guy, he builds factories for a living. He told me about 2 weeks ago that the reason the tech war, the trade war went better in Trump's first term is because China depended on us for helium. You need helium to make a lot of this technology that China's making. So from 2020 until about a year ago, China embarked on a nationwide Manhattan project to no longer be dependent on the U.S. for helium. That was our silver bullet against them in the trade war. They took it away from us, and they knew when Trump got elected he was going to play the trade war card. We didn't have the kind of vulnerability to exploit in them that they had on us with the rare earth mineral, which is why it's playing out the way it is now.
Brandon, I've only got about a minute left, but I do have to ask, because you mentioned it, why is BRICS not dead? I thought we were past all this.
Oh, because look, America looks weak right now, and they don't like the way that we handle the dollar, how we weaponize it, and we use it for sanctions and whatnot. Or they're threatening to take the sovereign wealth fund of Russia, a nuclear-armed superpower. So the rest of the developing world is going, hey, if they can do that to Russia, the Americans are going to do it to little old us. So we're going to align with Russia and China because we're not going to be pushed around. It's the politics of resistance. That's what you're dealing with.
Brandon Weichert, go read his stuff. He writes amazing books, by the way. Brandon, thank you, brother. I appreciate it. Dang it. I was hoping. Look, I understand when it comes to deals. This is why I wanted him on today to talk about this China deal. I understand when it comes to deals that not everybody, no side is going to be 100% happy. That's part of the point of making a deal. You're going to have to give a little, and I'm going to have to give a little. I understand all that. And I am hopeful that we will come out the back end of this well. But we essentially, the clock has begun ticking from what I understand about this trade deal. We don't have rare earths for years. We have it for a year. We have a year to figure out how to source this stuff. If we cannot, we will technologically fall behind the other superpower on the globe that wants to topple us. And that kind of seems important, doesn't it?